Alright everybody, today I did not feel like putting on a nice shirt for this video, so you get to see me in my undershirt today. That's just how it is. Sometimes you're gonna get some videos of me with the guns out and with my nice pale pasty flesh, just looking like a ghost in the afternoon sun. So today what I wanted to talk about was that more recently I decided to give it a try and see what would happen if I quit all video games for 30 days. And I wanted to talk about the impact that has had on my life, the impact that has had on my productivity, and how I think that it has in many ways improved my life. So starting off, I want to, of course, get all the technicalities out of the way. I didn't really quit all video games. So the reality is that I work as a game designer as my day-to-day job. And so, of course, I am playing video games, constantly playtesting new stuff that's being developed, playtesting new balances, playtesting new features, and so on. And so, of course, the end result is that I can never really fully avoid playing video games for a month. However, I still played video games in the context of the work that I was doing. That also means that I still played some games in the course of, say, for example, doing some competitive research. So a factor when you're working in mobile gaming is simply that you are constantly playing your competitors' games to get a sense of the kinds of features that they are making, to do research and to get a sense of what's going on in the market so that you can know how to improve upon that design or where you might find some bits and pieces that are useful in your own games and so on. And so, of course, the end result is that I am still continuing to play some mobile games, partly for the purposes of research, partly because sometimes it's just a little bit fun, and sometimes the line between those two gets a little bit blurred. Sometimes you're playing something for competitive research, but you realize you're probably playing it a bit more than you would be if you were just doing research because you actually enjoy the game, and that's how it is. I'm also a person who plays a lot of idle games. I work in idle games. I'm a big fan of idle games. And so I basically always have an idle game or two running on my computer at all times. That's something where it doesn't necessarily consume a ton of my day if I'm not actively putting a lot of time into it, but yeah, I'm still checking it here and there, optimizing a thing, pushing a button. It is what it is. Occasionally I'm gonna pop in and play an idle game a little bit. But what I did stop playing entirely was basically all of what you would consider a main console game, a main PC game. I didn't really play any PC games, any console games for an entire month. There's stuff that tends to really eat up a bunch of time when you sit down and do a really long play session for a few hours at a time. That's the kind of stuff that I cut out entirely and basically didn't do any of for a month. As always, don't hesitate to hit that like button to level up the channel, and we will continue. So I've been playing video games ever since I was a little kid. The very first video game that I ever really remember getting and playing is that my dad had a classic Game Boy, really old, like the ones that are like a massive brick, and he had a copy of Tetris, and he had a copy of some Star Trek game, and I would constantly play that Tetris game. I loved it so much. I was so much better at it than like my mother and my sisters, who would always like kind of try and play it and be like, oh, this is weird, I don't understand it. I really fell in love with video games in large part due to playing Tetris on the Game Boy. For a long time, I was really into just playing Game Boy games. I ended up saving up all my allowance to buy an N64 when I was a kid. I have been playing video games in some format or another my entire life. And that's been kind of one of the big hobbies that I have been into. When I was in university, for example, I was playing World of Warcraft very seriously. I was playing a hunter, I was raiding, I was in basically a guild that was top 10 in our server. Realistically, we were like number 10 or whatever, because it's not like we were super good, but we were good enough. We raided consistently, we did pretty good, and I was basically, as a result, one of the best geared hunters on the server, and I was doing that all throughout university while also, of course, having a social life and doing all the other stuff that, kids do at university. Now, of course, I work as a game designer, and that means that I get to make video games for a living, and that's awesome. Of course, I'm a very different person now than I was when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I had so much free time to spend doing all kinds of stuff. Now I'm a parent, now I have multiple jobs, now I am in a place where I just don't have the same amount of free time that I used to. I don't have the same ability to sit down and say, play World of Warcraft for 6 hours, because I can just focus on it and concentrate on it for a long period of time. So of course that's changed a little bit the way that I play video games, but I still enjoy video games. I still play them, and in general, I tend to be a person who likes to complete video games. When I was a kid, I was very much that person who I would always try and 100% everything, even when that was terribly doomed to failure because the game was not, at all balanced to be something that could really easily be 100%ed. I would always put a ton of time into trying to complete video games, first by actually completing whatever the plot or storyline associated with it was, but then later on, of course, just trying to be the best possible, doing everything that you could do in a video game before I gave it up. Nowadays, of course, I have maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours a day that I can sit down and play a video game, typically early in the morning, because I have a bit of an odd work schedule in which I do a little bit of work in the morning, and then I work from 1 p.m. to 9 p.m., and then after that, I'm typically spending time with my wife before we go to bed. And so I really only have a little bit of a sliver of time in the morning where I can play some video game. I'm also, of course, a fitness person, a fitness industry person, and that means that I'm regularly working out. So very often, especially since I've been working out from home for the last year, that means that, say I'll be hanging out here in the morning, I'll be doing a workout, but I'll be doing some sets here in the office, doing some push-ups, playing a video game, doing some push-ups, playing a video game, switching back and forth between the two. And that's something where, yes, it means that I am technically playing a video game, but also I'm also spending a lot of that time working out. So the reality is that the time is a lot less focused, it's a lot more divided than it used to be, simply because often one of the only times that I can fit in some time to play games is, of course, during a workout in between sets. The lines on that are a lot more blurred. Also, it might be something where, I'm working out and I'm doing some emails and I'm playing a video game and I'm working out. It's all very, I don't really have, again, the time to focus on video games the way that I used to. So why did I decide to quit video games for a while? Well, part of the reason is simply that, I'm not a kid anymore. When I was a kid, it felt like there was constantly always a new video game out there. There was constantly always something that I didn't know about or hadn't played yet. There was constantly something where I could go back and play some 10-year-old game that everyone said was really cool that I never got around to playing. And of course, between releases of major video games, I would sit down and I would comb through the websites, the video game news websites, to get an idea, what's coming up? What should I get excited about? And I would spend all my time doing that. Of course, nowadays, I've basically played everything that there is to play. Not in the sense that I've played every video game in the world, of course, but I've played all the stuff that's really interesting to me and that I'm actually interested in playing. There's a couple times a year where maybe a major release comes out and I'm really excited about something and I play that for a while. But aside from that, the time between releases, of course, it's not like I'm sitting here combing video game news sites all the time anymore. I'm a professional. I've got a lot less time to do that sort of thing. And so there's not sort of the all-consumingness that it used to be. I might purchase a few indie games, a couple smaller releases in between, but for the most part, it's just something where there's not enough content in the video game world to fill up my time the same way that there used to be. Partly, again, because I'm just an adult, I've gotten older, my playing patterns have changed a little bit. At the same time, I find that when I'm actively playing a video game, it tends to consume all of my free time. When I am playing, say, for example, a 40-hour-long video game, and I'm playing it in 2-hour-a-day chunks every single day, that means that it's going to take me a few weeks to actually get through all of that. And in the meantime, that's going to be a few weeks that basically all of my free time is gone. I always feel a little bit more maybe irritable that I don't quite have as much free time because I'm sort of focused on finishing this game. And it also sort of detracts from the experience of playing the game even, because knowing that I can only focus on it for a little bit at a time, it might be something where I get, say, 30 hours into a 40-hour game, and I'm kind of like impatient for it to be done already because I just want it to be over with so that I can get back to doing whatever else I need to do. And this tends to reflect a little bit negatively on the way that I experience video games now. Again, simply because I just don't have the time to focus on them, because it's so divided, because I am really sort of weighing and analyzing every single hour that I'm putting into a video game. It means that some video games that maybe I would have enjoyed a lot more when I was a kid, when I had a lot more time to put into it, I don't quite have the same experience or the same enjoyment out of it anymore, because I'm always subconsciously rushing through it to get done with it so I can move on to the rest of my life. So I thought, hey, maybe I should really try and cut this out. Maybe I should actually just see what it looks like in my life if I'm not playing video games, if video games aren't soaking up all of my free time. Let's see what that actually means for me. So what were the results? Well, generally, I had a lot more free time, yes, and also generally I was a lot more bored. That's kind of, you'd expect that. If I free up a couple hours in the day that I wasn't really used to having before, that's 2 hours a day extra that I've got to find something to do with. And if I don't have the the primary way that I used to use up my free time available to me, by definition, I'm probably going to be bored some of the time. I'm probably not going to be able to find things to fill up that time as easily. I also find that typically when you have a lot of free time in your day, a lot of it does tend to get wasted. When you have more free time, more of it tends to get absorbed into sort of those useless tasks that eat up free time. So for example, things like scrolling on Twitter when I don't really need to be, things like spending extra time getting out of bed because I'm messing around on my phone in the mornings. Those things tend to expand a little bit because there's less urgency to everything that I'm doing during the day, simply because, again, I know that I have more free time, and when I know that I have more free time, there's less urgency to things, and that means that overall, there's those little time-wasting things just tend to eat up a little bit more of your day, especially if you're not careful. At the same time, I was also generally just a lot more productive. Because I had all that free time, it was kind of like, okay, what am I going to do? If I'm not going to spend this time playing a video game, maybe I'll spend more time writing the next blog post. Maybe I'll spend more time filming the next YouTube video. Maybe I'll just get a head start on my work for the day a little bit early. Whatever the case is, I simply, because I had more time, I was generally more productive because it was just like I might as well start working on some stuff. If I'm bored, why not? Why not avoid just spending a bunch of time doom scrolling on Twitter when I could actually be using that for something useful and getting a little bit ahead on something? I tend to think that I would have probably been less happy. Like I kind of thought, oh, because I don't have video games, which make me so happy, which, have been a big hobby for me all of my life, I'll probably be less happy. I'll probably be more irritable, etc. But I didn't really find that to be the case. Yes, I was more bored because I didn't have those to do, and that meant that I had to change my habits and find new things to do, but it didn't necessarily mean that I was typically feeling very overworked or very upset or anything like that throughout the day. I usually used video games as an outlet for sort of blowing off steam, but the reality was that I didn't necessarily need the video games, I think. I could have really basically just done anything. And in many cases, kind of the work that I do, writing blog posts, making YouTube videos, is in many ways not just work, but also a hobby. It's stuff that I enjoy doing. And so when I have less time that I'm spending on the primary hobby, which is video games, I have a lot more time to spend on all that other stuff, and I did. And as a result, I was typically very far ahead of kind of my normal pace of things. It's something where before I might have struggled to do one a week blog posts, one a week YouTube videos, but I find, okay, now I've suddenly got 3-4 weeks done ahead of time simply because I am sitting down and churning out all that stuff because I don't have anything better to do. Another bonus side effect that I've discovered is that I'm generally better at keeping on top of chores. When I'm bored and I don't have anything to do and I'm like, oh man, it's been a little while since I vacuumed in the office, maybe I should do that again. When you're bored and you don't have anything good to do, you're more likely to sit down and say, maybe I should actually clean up, maybe I should actually do the chores, maybe I should do some more dishes. I generally found that I had more time to spend cleaning the house simply because, again, I had more time in general. I was more bored, and that extra free time meant that I was just more on top of that stuff as well. So to sum it all up, I'm a person who works in video games, and as a result, that means that I see very much from the inside the way that video games are designed. Yes, video games are fun. They're a great way to spend your free time. There are tons of social benefits. They're video games are cool. They're fun. But at the same time, many video games are designed to make money. That's what it is. It's an industry that is trying to make money. And that means that as a result, sometimes you will find things where it's not so much designed to keep you happy or to really fulfill you or to make your life better, so much as it's designed to just continue holding your attention in ways that can make you spend more money, or that will just maybe not necessarily spend money on that game in particular, but on the entire sort of video game ecosystem in general. That you're just constantly looking for the next video game to buy, the next video game to take up your time, and so on. This experiment helped me to get a sense of the ways in which I don't necessarily need video games to make me happy. I don't need video games to fill out my day. Going for a long period of time without playing video games, at least not primarily as a mode of entertainment, meant a big shift in the kind of person that I was. But it didn't mean that I was any, necessarily worse off for it, simply because I had taken a lot of video games out of the equation. I don't want to say that video games are necessarily going to be addictive for everybody, but I think that even for people where, maybe it doesn't rise to the level of addiction, they can still in many ways feel compulsive. You can feel like a need or a desire to continue playing games, to continue earning more things, to continue leveling up, and so on. And that compulsion may or may not be in line with kind of your goals, with the kind of life that you want to live, with the kind of person that you want to be. I simply recommend being mindful of the time that you spend on video games. Try and do kind of a KonMari sort of thing. If it's not bringing you joy, you don't have to be playing it. I often remember many times where I would find that, okay, I was most of the way into a game, I wasn't really enjoying it, but I felt like finishing it for the sake of finishing it. And as a result, I just wasted a bunch of time that would have been better spent elsewhere in my life. That is a thing that I want to avoid. That's a thing that I've become aware of that is sort of a innate problem in my behavior that I need to change. And being aware of that is something that I think maybe I would not have realized if I hadn't taken this break to step back, to get a little bit of perspective, to get some more ideas about just what it looks like from the outside to be a person who spends most of my free time playing video games. I would simply recommend being mindful of kind of the place that video games have in your life and decide what relationship you want to have to video games. So as always, that is the end of this video. I hope that it has been useful. I hope that you enjoyed it. Hopefully this is meaningful to some of you out there. Maybe some of you can try a similar experiment yourselves and see how it goes. Let me know if you do. But that is it for today. As always, like, comment, subscribe. Tell me what you want to see in future videos, and I will talk to you all next week. Have a good one.